Ladies and gentlemen, pat yourself on the back, take a deep breath, and make no mistake in realizing that you are right here, right now, for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives filled with passion and purpose. Jared, how you doing this morning?
Good, man. Fighting a little cold, but other than that, we are back in the game. Excited to be here. We got some video up for the first time.
Yeah.
Things are getting real. Episode 5.
Yeah, 5 in a row.
Yeah, we can't thank you enough for the first 4 and the following that's being created. And this is not like every other podcast. We're here to grow, to learn. You will have homework. You're going to contribute to this, and we will all get better together on purpose.
Every episode got
Love
the homework.
it.
I love it.
Love
It's already
it.
made changes in my life.
That's what you were saying.
Yeah.
You're a week off of social media. We're missing our Dak Grat and stuff. So what's going on with that?
Yeah, just recharging. You know, I realized that it was a general purpose with the posting that I was doing, but I want to get even more specific because there was a lot of time going towards that I said needs to be even more on purpose. So taking a little break to reassess and analyze and coming back with even more purpose.
Yeah, I enjoy that, and that's the thing, guys. We are students of the podcast just like you are. If we're talking about something, we're doing it. This is not a place where you will be preached to and told certain things, but we don't follow it. So let's get to last week's homework. We talked about planting our gardens, planting the seeds for things we expect to harvest in the fall. So we have to be patient with them, nurture them, manage the weeds, manage the rabbits. So for me, man, my thing that I'm working on now is I'm going to run a half marathon in September. I've never done it. In the military, we ran a lot. I don't remember how far it was, but I've never actually woke up in the morning and was like, I want to run 13.1 miles.
Dang.
It seems dumb to me, to be perfectly honest. No offense to you to run it, but it's a challenge. I've never done it, so I want to try it. And one of the ways I'm going to motivate myself to get up and run on the days I don't want to run, when it's cold or rainy, is I'm going to do it with my oldest daughter. And that's pretty special to me. She's 23 now. And as I look back on how I raised her, she was very independent. So I didn't do a lot of the things with her that I've done with my other kids. There weren't the trips to sports and stuff because she just kind of pushed. She wanted to do things her own way, which is fine because she's a strong, independent little lady. But this is something we're going to do together. And it's cool. We're going to practice together and go on runs together. And then in September, we're going to run 13.1 miles for no apparent reason when we could have drove it and just share the journey together. So that's how I'm going to manage the weeds and the doubts and the rabbits that want to take me off my path, is remember that I'm not only doing this for me, but I'm doing this for our relationship and with her. And I think we're going to be closer at the end of this. We're going to face some personal doubts about, can we accomplish it? We're both going to do it together. We're going to piggyback off one another. And man, I'm excited to share the journey with her.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's a fun seed to plant. You guys will push yourselves until you hear that voice, right? Telling you,
I love it.
Telling you need to stop. That's how you know you're pushing yourself to that level. So that's awesome. So I took inventory of what I'm planting this season, and I have 2 seeds, which I guess are follow-up seeds because there's been work towards these 2 goals already. But one is to plant my seed for my MMA fight in the fall, my first MMA fight. I've been under Coach Jared's wing, Coach Steve, Coach Ryan. Have had some amazing coaches at Trials MMA. And specifically this month, April through the fall, will be a lot more of the MMA training, really up in that. And to get our first capital raise for B-Nails, best vaporizer company on the planet. Shameless plug.
That's right.
Been learning a lot more about raising capital. I mean, last year I didn't even know what a pitch deck was. Now I have built a pitch deck. I've pitched it to potential investors. I've pitched it to judges, and just executing day by day to learn those things. The way I'm going to keep the rabbits and weeds out, frankly, is by surrounding myself with the bees, the pollinators, the people who are helping my garden grow, right? Going to trials, making sure I'm showing up to practice, I'm staying focused, I'm meeting with my mentors, with my consultants about how to pitch to these investors. I'm doing these pitch competitions and really sharpening those skills. So I'm really excited for the work that comes with it, and then, of course, the harvest that we'll reap.
Yeah, and I like that, and I think Ali's goals are very similar to many of you, and here's what I love about it. His goals are very real, right? He wants to fight, which is a great endeavor. I tell you, if you want to learn something about yourself, go walk out in front of people, take your shirt off, and get in a fist fight in a cage. You know one of you is going to lose. Like, you will no doubt learn about yourself. But the other thing is, I didn't hear any creative or out of the ordinary things you need to do to get there, whether it's pitching your business or getting into the cage fights. And literally, you're going to keep the weeds and the rabbits out by showing up every day to the places you need to be.
Yeah.
Right?
It's that simple.
It is that simple, but we make it so complex.
Mm-hmm. Nothing complicated about it.
No, like, let's go to where we're supposed to be. And now here's what I'm going to challenge you. If you don't know where you're supposed to be, find it. Mm-hmm. Find a group. Find a gym. Find the bees in your community that will pollinate your garden, that will help you get your dreams going. And that's what I applaud you for. And Alex and our little team here, right? We got the gym. We know every day we go to the gym, we're getting better. The challenge is what? Driving to the gym.
Yep.
Right? We know that by being in our mentorship groups, we're getting better. The challenge is opening your laptop and clicking on Zoom.
Waking up.
Yeah, so it's not that complicated, team. So send us what you're working on in your garden, what you're planting, and then let's be accountable to each other and realize that the majority of times to get where we want to be isn't that hard. Mm-hmm. It's just consistently doing what we already know we're supposed to do.
Amen. Amen. So listeners, be sure to be sending us your stuff. Every week we're going to have homework. We want to make sure that this podcast is about learning, getting hyped up, but also executing when you have that momentum, motivation. So make sure to get those things in. So let's start out with today's topic. We're talking about relationships. You know, relationships are so important. There's a Harvard study that was done on 600 plus people for their entire course of their lives. And they asked them the questions on their deathbed about what they regret most, what they wish they would have done. And it was it was like over 90%. It was all about relationships, about the people in their lives, whether it was family, friends. They all wished they had done a little bit better. And the people that felt most fulfilled were the ones that felt that they had really quality relationships, not necessarily quantity, but quality relationships. And in my experience, I've learned that a lot of the principles of relationships, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a brother, whether it's a parent, whether it's a business partner, a lot of the same principles apply. So with so many potential relationships out there, let's start with the question, Jared. How do you know what relationships are the most important?
Yeah, that's good, man. It's tough. I think first off, we've got to identify real relationships. Likes and followers on social media isn't a real relationship. Right, and that may offend some people. Some people may not like. That's just the truth. Real relationships are give and take, and the relationships in which, to me, the ones that are worth having are the ones where I'm held accountable. Right, where you just don't agree with everything I say all the time. Because there's a great saying out there: if you and I agree on everything all the time, there's no need for both of us. Mm-hmm. Right? Because think about it. That? I don't know. Some guy smarter than me. I'll have to find out. We could
That's a good
fact check that. But
I've heard that.
Literally, the quote is, if you and I agree on everything all the time, there's no need for both of us. So the best relationships are, to me, the ones that we're going to disagree sometime. And it's okay to disagree, but then we're going to talk about disagreements. Mm-hmm. We're going to hold each other accountable to it, and we're going to grow. So that's what I look for in relationships. I don't want the easy ones where I'm the man all the time and everybody just listens to me and it's always my way, because I could do that by myself, right? And marriage, business partnerships, podcast, whatever you're in is a relationship, and you got to look at it that way. And so I always look at, okay, is this relationship fulfilling me and helping me move forward? Mm. Am I helping them? Am I bringing value? Or is this a relationship that's toxic, pulling me back, keeping me status quo? Mm. And that's literally, to me, the guideline for those relationships. And I think when you're younger, it's harder to identify those because you're finding out who you are a lot of times. But I think you get to my age, man, I'm pretty confident in who I am and where I want to be. So it's easier for me to start putting boundaries and limits on the relationships and kind of nip in the buds, the ones that I know aren't fulfilling, and nurture the other ones. What do you think?
Yeah. So, in honor of your quote, I will disagree with one point, and I will agree with another. The point that I disagree with is that that social media relationships aren't real. So
Sure.
one example, I think that this relationship right here is very real. If you engage with us, right, we're holding you accountable. We're wanting to fulfill you. Maybe we don't know each other personally, but I think that there's a lot of value when you're trying to cultivate a relationship. But I do see what you're saying. The general population doesn't. You shouldn't count every friend and follower as real relationships. But I think that you can cultivate in today's day and age real digital relationships. I also think that you're absolutely right. It's about are you being fulfilled? Are they helping you move forward? And again, there's also relationships that may just do one or the other, right? For example, my grandmother, my abuelita, which is the only reason why I still know a little bit of Spanish. Thank God. Gracias a Dios, right? Gracias, abuelita. She doesn't necessarily, I guess she does. She calls me mi triunfador, the triumphant one. But she doesn't necessarily push me in specific ways of checking in on what I'm doing, but she'll check in on me. She fulfills me with love, and just simply by always calling me the triumphant one, and reminding me that, you know, I do break through barriers. And she reminds me of little stories as I was a kid. She may not necessarily be like, oh, what are you doing for your capital raise and things like that, but just that unconditional love, right? So that is an important relationship. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Are these relationships fulfilling you, pushing you forward, and adding to your quality of life?
And they're helping you accomplish your dreams, right? And don't get me wrong, I love social media. You guys that follow me and follow what we do, we're big on social media, but you hit it on the head. If I sit and I just watch for likes and hearts, that's not a real relationship to me, right? That I'm looking there for instant gratification. Oh, so many people like this. Engaged followership's completely different. Mm-hmm. If you're sending us questions, if we're offering advice, getting advice from you, then I love those social media relationships. So I think there's two within there, right? And I think too many times people get down on themselves in relationships because they're looking only at the numbers that are social media. They're looking at, oh, this only got so many hearts, and they're assigning personal value to how many people liked or didn't like something, where I want to get away from that, mm-hmm. right? You don't control likes and stuff, but if you get 2 comments of, hey, man, you're making an impact, I love your podcast, how many likes is that worth? Mm-hmm. To me, that's infinitely more, right? Like, we made an impact there. So that's why I gauge is I want real relationships, mm-hmm. you know, and engage. And you hit it on the head. It's social engagement on there, not just like we talked about in the other episodes, just scrolling to scroll, but socially engaging, congratulating people on their successes, offering condolences on their losses versus just running through to compare yourself to everything.
Definitely. Jared, what do you think about some of the core principles of having quality relationships, right? Because we have all different types of relationships. We have romantic relationships, which there's obviously different small differences, but I do think the core principles are the same, and I like to go into what are the core principles of having all quality relationships. We have romantic relationships, mm-hmm. we have work relationships, right? And then we have personal, just friend relationships. What are some of these core principles? You mentioned give and take, and I absolutely agree. What's something specific things that we can tell our listeners, like these are kind of the things to try and practice to make sure that you do have quality relationships?
Yeah, I think the first thing is be aware of your relationships, right? And really take inventory of them. Are they positive, fulfilling relationships, or are they draining, negative relationships? And what I like to do is, after I come and meet you for coffee, I just take inventory. When you leave, how do I feel? Do I feel like, okay, I'm capable, I'm ready to go, man, that was a great meeting? Whether you told me good news or bad news, how did I feel about meeting with you? And then on the flip side, if you told me I won the lottery, but the whole time you told me you won the lottery, you told me how my taxes were, how many people commit suicide after winning the lottery, like you drained me. Even though you had good news, it wasn't a good relationship. So I literally take inventory. At the end of our context, I think, how did I feel when I left? And I'm not a huge feeling dude. I'm much more logical thinking, strategy. But the one place that I think feeling trumps a lot of that is your relationships. Right? Especially when you're in business, especially when you're in partnerships, especially when you're trying to grow. How am I feeling about this? Yeah. Because a lot of times the feelings left unsaid derail any success you have that's tangible. And we miss that because we focus on results too much.
Absolutely agree. I don't know who said this either, but whoever
so real
said
quick, so we're a podcast of quotes where we have no idea where they come from. So poor Alex has his work cut out for him because he's got a lot of fact checking on quotes.
Yeah, we got some research to do on this quote. But some wise man or wise woman said that people don't remember what you said; they remember how you made them feel.
For sure.
And I absolutely agree. You know, I have. You know, you think of old friends, and those feelings come back. If you haven't seen someone in 4 or 5 years, your brain kind of registers like how you felt around that person. If it's not a good relationship, you might feel that anxiety or that fear or that worry. So I absolutely agree with that. I think I really don't have too much to add. That was very concise, and I think that is very important. As far as the logical piece, I think it does play a role. You know, you can't run your entire life based on feeling and emotion. I think it is very important to have that logical piece, but balance it.
That's the key. It's a balance, right? We don't. I think, especially in today's society, people are one extreme or the other. They're a completely suppressed emotion, and that brings on the unhappiness, the mental health issues we have in our country. Like, they're suppressed emotion. Or they're on the other side, they're completely emotional, and everything offends them, and everything is a slight, and any disagreement is bullying, right? We got to be in that middle ground to have truly legitimate relationships, especially as you're talking business, marriage, those long-term relationships that you're dependent upon because you took a vow for life, or I'm dependent upon because you and I agreed we're going to run this business and make this much money. Well, I have to bring both to our relationships, the logical side and the feeling side. And I don't want to suppress one or the other because then you're out of balance. And to me, that's when those unseen volcanoes happen, right? It just builds up, builds up, builds up, and then it explodes. And at the end, what was a promising, beautiful relationship ends up completely catastrophic.
How do you know when a relationship isn't worth it anymore? Whether it's a friend, whether it's a business, whether it's even a family member. You know, for example, vulnerability here. My mother, her and I occasionally will get into arguments because she chooses not to communicate with certain siblings. But as my mother, she, preaches that my brother and I need to always be communicating, that we're, that we're all each other have, things like that. And sometimes we have disagreements because I tell her, well, why don't you practice what you preach? And she tells me that there's a certain point you reach that even you cut family out of your life. So for her, she kind of reached the point to even some of her family members, she reached that point to where the relationship for her wasn't worth it. And that's something that I explore with her. What do you think about that? When is a relationship, whether it's business, friend, romantic, friends, when is it not worth it anymore?
Yeah, that's hard. And I think that changes as you progress through life. When I was younger, we had a daughter really young. I guarantee if I didn't have my daughter, and my wife will probably tell you this too, we'd have broke up. Because we just, whatever issue we face seems so big. But having a daughter, having that purpose, we fought through it and continued. Now we're on 20 years of marriage and it's going great. Without that, I don't know. So I think you progress. And I'll be honest, for me, I was quick to cut people earlier in my life. If you wronged me, if I didn't feel you were being honest, if I just didn't like you, like my wife would always be like, you're so hard on people. I would give them legitimately one shot. And if it wasn't it, I was done. And now as I'm getting older, I'm like, man, maybe that was a coaching moment for me. So I don't know the answer, but I think you got to be aware of the relationships around you. And I think it's going to be different for everybody of when's enough. But then I also think you allow grace and forgiveness, right? And that's what's really helped me in the last few years. And what I'm still working on is I'm hard on my family. And I disassociated myself from a lot of my family. Was it the right thing to do? I don't know. I did it. But now as I look back and I visited my grandpa 2 weeks ago as he's nearing the end of his life, I'm like, okay, when I'm there, I probably want to have forgiveness. So I think that's an important point for us to talk about or to share, is that none of this is truly permanent, right? And relationships, like your garden, will grow. There's going to be seasons of growth in a relationship. There's going to be seasons of maybe decay in a relationship. As I put more energy to this relationship, that relationship may suffer a little bit. And it's okay. They're not all going to get the same amount of water every day. They're not going to all get the same amount of sunlight. But they are relationships. And I think when we realize like they all kind of have seasons and it's going to come and it's going to go, and just because maybe today wasn't a good day doesn't mean tomorrow can't be. And that's something I've struggled with because I've generally put people in a box and I just move. Mm-hmm. And then I realize, man, my kids don't see their cousins very much. Why is that? Mm-hmm. It's because of the boxes I created.
Yeah.
Fair? Not fair, right? So now I got to remedy that relationship so that those cousins know my kids, so that they look up to them, they have the relationship. And so I think that's an important point, is you got to reflect. If it's a relationship that only affects you and I can make whatever decisions I want. But if it's a relationship that affects other people that had no say in the relationship, sometimes you got to move your ego out of the way. Sometimes you got to get over the hurt feelings. Sometimes you have to have the difficult conversation. Because the other people are affected by what comes out of that relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting point, because I don't have children, so I think I don't think about relationships too much in that way, like how it's going to affect others, really. To be frank, I really do think about relationships pretty selfishly, unless it is with family members involved, but I can only imagine that with a parent. We have talked about briefly how the most important relationship is the one with yourself, right? You look
Absolutely.
in the mirror, that is the absolute number one relationship. And it's important to, that's not a relationship that you ever really want decaying. You know, you really want constant growth, and that is also dependent on the relationships that you have with people. For me, when a relationship is not worth it anymore is when, and sometimes the universe will do it for you. So moment of vulnerability here. I am on 3 days of 4-year business partner just resigned last week. 2 days later, my girlfriend of about 2.5 years just dumped me, and everything was going fantastically well romantically. Business was we kind of knew that was coming, but point being, I think that me being honest with myself, deep down the relationship with myself, that I may have known what was best for me was maybe ending these relationships even sooner than they did. But I think sometimes if it's not meant to be for you, like the universe is going to do it for you. Having that important relationship with myself and being more true to myself, and I literally manifested like Q2, this is the launch pad thing for everything, you know, starting that, really getting to the next level in MMA, really getting to the next level in my business. Having such a close relationship with myself, it manifested these things out that aren't serving my highest purpose. And sometimes you won't be strong enough to choose to end that. You know, if you really love someone and you know that it's not serving like your highest purpose, it can be really hard to do. Thankfully, and don't get me wrong, you know, this is a couple days ago. I'm still hurting. It's tough, but you really have to remember the most important relationship is with you, and you have to realize what you're trying to do to progress yourself. So I think that it's being honest with yourself and knowing, but like you said, you never have to necessarily have something that's completely over, but they can decay, and you can realize that. You know, you can realize that this relationship may not be growing. Don't have to completely cut it out, but it can decay. So I think that's a really interesting question about when to know it's relationship over, and it's different for everybody.
Yeah, and it's going to evolve as you progress in your life. When I was younger, I was much shorter to cut relationships and never revisit them. As I'm getting older, I probably have more tolerance and I have more patience.
Mm-hmm. And it's a balance too, right? Because
for sure.
Too much give and take. And I'm such a big believer that everything happens for a reason, and that I wouldn't change anything. But frankly, my business partner and I, my ex-business partner, we had like disagreement. We had signs of this early on, to where sometimes you shouldn't give too many chances, right? You have to have a balance. Sometimes it's good to have a little bit of young Jared of, hey, cut, done, let's keep moving. You know, I think for me, I lacked that, because I was very similar as well in my college years. Like, you're not adding to my life. Like, I don't even want you, to where I kind of went too far over on the other spectrum, and like, give people benefit of the doubt, forgive, trust, give them another chance. And you have to find that balance. You really do.
But I think if you reflect back, the balance point and what you will tolerate changes on how you feel about yourself. And I think that's the key, right? That relationship with yourself is by far the most important.
Oh, yeah.
Because I would venture to say, when we feel down on ourselves, when we feel depressed, in the dumps, is when we allow people to take the most advantage of us, right? Because we're looking externally for relationships. So we're seeking friendship wherever it offers. We're seeking romance wherever it pops. These are the relationships like, I can't believe I did that, right? Because you're looking externally. Mm-hmm. When we feel strong internally, we set healthy limits on a relationship, healthy boundaries on a relationship, what we will tolerate, what we won't tolerate, because we know who we are. And I would say that for me is probably the biggest transition in my relationships, is I have a really healthy understanding of who I am, probably for the first time in my life over the last 4 years. So now I'm confident that the boundaries I set are right for me. I'm not wondering, should I give them more chances? No, I know this works for me.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Yeah,
right?
no, that totally makes sense.
It comes from internal. Mm-hmm. And that's what I want listeners and the audience to understand, is quit looking external for your validation. Like, we can look external for fertilizer, for the garden analogy. We look external for the bees to help pollinate. But the seeds we plant come internal.
Yeah. And it becomes your filtering mechanism. Once you really decide inside, these are my core values, right? This is what I'm about. This is what I need. Those people start coming into your life. You don't really even need to seek them out. You know, for example, perfect example, it's crazy how fast all this is happening, Jared, for me at least, because June will be 4 years as a business owner. And frankly, I thought I was going to be a millionaire at 25. I'm still not. I'm like, what the heck is going on? You know, I'm 2 years behind schedule. But I've been manifesting. I've been putting in the grind day by day, and this quarter was the first quarter. I have my traction thing over there. You see our 90-day goals up here on the website that we really focused in. And I've been saying this was the first quarter where I'm telling people, you know, I am a cannabis industry tycoon. I am an MMA fighter. I am, and speaking these things into existence, like Muhammad Ali said, right? He said he was the greatest before he really knew he was, kind of thing. Speaking these things into existence, and those people gravitate. Business partner, gone. Ex-girlfriend, gone. Next day, I go to a Toastmaster meeting. I meet the mayor of Fort Collins, right? After that, I get invited to a podcast, a live podcast for millennial entrepreneurs. Like, all these people that you want coming into your life start going in the ones. If you're not going to cut the relationships that don't serve you, something will happen that'll kind of breed those out to what's best for what you really want deep inside. But if you're not doing that internal work, like you almost on every step of the homework that you give to our listeners, awareness is one of the first things, right? Sure. Being aware and then executing on what you need. So, yeah.
No, it's good. And guys, relationships are always going to be tricky, because that means there's multiple people involved. And with that comes multiple sets of emotions and ideas and interpretations of things that may or may not be true. Or we may hear the same thing and you feel one way about it and I feel the other, but it was the exact same thing. And it's okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you don't want relationships that are everybody's exactly like you. That's going to be a pretty boring room to sit in. Mm-hmm. And acknowledge that, like, honestly, the best relationships are the ones a lot of times you have the least in common with.
Yeah. Opposites attract, right?
On the surface.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then actually once you delve in, you're going to find a lot of similarities. And that's what I would encourage people to do is look for those relationships. That person in your office, the person at the gym, wherever your social groups are where you think, man, I have nothing in common with that person. Take a chance, strike a conversation, and I think you'd be shocked at how much you actually have in common with them if you get past the little layers that keep us from one another.
Yeah.
A lot of times we internalize it, and if we don't share our problems, if we don't share what we're working on, there's no accountability, there's no growth, and it seems insurmountable. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you actually share, you'll see other people are tackling bigger issues than you. Or if you're tackling the biggest issue, you got support along the way.
Yeah. And I'm not sure exactly where we're sharing it yet, but our producer of the podcast will let you guys know. Email. You can always hit us up on Instagram as well, Facebook. We both have YouTube channels. Mine's less developed, but definitely the media is out there. Ali Abuzlam, Jared Hardy. So just to recap the homework, identify the 5 people I'm spending the most time with, and then write 2 to 3 things about how they make me feel and what they're contributing to the relationship or taking away.
Or taking away, let's be honest. And some people are not giving.
Reporting it back next week. Shoot us an email. We'd love to go through those responses.
Yeah, we'd like email for that in case you're sharing something personal. We'll pick a few to maybe share on the podcast, but I guarantee if you reach out to us, we are in professional development. We will respond to you, and we'll share this journey together. So we appreciate you guys being here. Ali, good stories today, my man. That's a rough week, but like we talked to you guys. Yeah, he's here, right? He didn't take the day off. He didn't back down. He rose up. We're moving forward. We still got goals to accomplish, and we'll attract those that are supposed to be in our circle. So hats off to you, my friend. I'm proud of you. Keep battling forward. Alex, as always, it's good having you on the backside of things. We can't get it done without you. And team, remember this. Life is far too short for us to live any other way than on purpose, and we will do that as a team. So we will see you all next week.
This has been the On Purpose Podcast. If you'd like to follow up on this week's action items or give your feedback, please reach us by email, which is in the description below. If you'd like to keep up with Jared or Ali, check out their Instagram accounts, both of which are in the description below. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.